Hi guys, this is my pool plan video in DFFOO Global, and in this video I'll be covering the events and banners where Celes will be featured as a synergy unit. You can refer to the cropped infographic on the left hand side of the slide, which was derived from the thewereotter's global forecast to see which events these are. And as always, I'll be including a link in the video description to the full global forecast as well in case you are interested. First up, just a quick look at how I did in the last arc, which was Minwu's FRBT arc. I went in deep with tickets on Minwu's initial banner because I actually had a lot of tickets that were about to expire, and after 630 tickets I scored only 2 of Minwu's FR, but luckily I also scored his BT then, so I decided to just call it a day and max out his FR with high power stones instead. I skipped Van's banner, and when it came to Hope's event, I went in with tickets once more, and luckily enough I scored 1 of his FR after just 70 tickets, which I consider it to be very lucky, and so I just used high power stones to max out the rest of his FR. All in all, I think it's a pretty good run. I spent 700 tickets, but I did get all the weapons that I was aiming for. Alright, so starting off from the first event on this arc, which is the 6-man event, Area 3. And this event will feature 2 banners, and the highlight of the banners is going to be Celes with a newly released FR and BT weapon. The secondary featured characters also vary across these 2 banners. The first banner having Aiko and Tancred as the banner mates, and the second banner with Kadaj, Zidane and Wakar as banner mates. The secondary feature characters aren't terribly exciting, and they don't really offer a lot beyond recently released supports and DPS characters in the past few banners, so I won't really be focusing on them. The main prize is really Celes. Beyond the damage upgrade, Celes also did receive several functional changes that serves to better improve her overall kit as a magical tank in the party. So first of all, her trademark runic buff now also provides a little bit of brave damage reduction across both physical and magical side of brave damage to her allies. Her LD gets 1 additional skill use, and now will also restore 1 skill count of her S1 and S2 when it is used. Her EX buff does receive 1 additional addition, and that is that while that EX buff is up, any debuffs that Celes inflicts will get its duration increased by a further 2 turns. And this is pretty useful because a lot of her damage and her tanking capabilities come from her trap as well, so the plus 2 turn duration would then apply to the trap that she applies. Her BT is actually pretty good, I have to say. It does provide some very juicy auras to the party. So brave damage plus 50%, HP damage plus 20%, 50% increased brave caps, 30% increased HP caps, 20% brave gain up, and a 30% HP damage reduction to the party. But the thing that really makes it very good is that while her BT aura is up, all brave damage that the enemy does is changed to magical brave damage, even if it was by default melee or ranged. This obviously pairs very well with her runic buff, which means also that while her BT aura is up, she will absorb all brave damage that the enemies do to herself. Celes also gets a new force weapon here, and her force will inflict her LD debuff at the usual 6 turns when it is used. Her force time conditional is that when you do an ice damage attack, including any often ice damage attack, you get 5%, not forgetting that Celes is a party ice enchanter, so you should have no issues meeting this force conditional. If Celes is the party member that does the ice attack, she gets a further 20% to that, so Celes herself will get a 25% boost, while her allies gets the 5% boost. Anytime you absorb brave damage from the enemy, you get a 20%, and this will also work if say you bring Leon for his dark absorb. And finally, if you attack an enemy that is targeting yourself during your turn, you get a plus 20%. And this also works if the enemy is targeting your entire party with an all attack. Overall, a pretty solid FR that capitalizes on her traps and of course off-turn damage. The question of course is really whether do you want or need another tank in your roster. If you are fairly new, it is my strong recommendation to actually go for Celes because tanks actually have a lot of value in this game. Celes does become notable for being one of the few tanks that have a BT weapon. I guess the only other one that you could potentially consider a tank is Zac with his burst weapon. That being said, of course there are many other options for tank that still work up to this date, such as Oren or Galuf, or of course Gladiolus as well. So if you have any or all of them, then it becomes a bigger dilemma whether or not you should or want to pull for Celes. As for me, my plans to actually going for gems, chasing her FR, and I hope to get her burst weapon along the way. If I don't actually get her burst weapon, I might just hold off until Dorgann's event and try to score her burst weapon on that banner. I was initially on the fence for Celes, to be honest, but when I looked at her kit, I think she does have a lot of potential as an auto plus character, and that is actually the main reason why I'm aiming to pull for her. In an auto plus run, the most consistent strategy is often damage dealers, and of course having a strong tank and damage mitigator with a BT weapon with solid BT auras I think would make a big impact to the game. Next up is Aranea, and Aranea is the final character in our roster who will receive a C90 upgrade. Way back in the Chaos era, she is probably one of the best units in the meta at the time. Unfortunately though, I have to say it's not really the same case now. She's not really bad, she's actually pretty solid. Her damage will be buffed up considerably, and it will be at least in line with the current meta. And the great thing about her upcoming rework is that her Vital Crusher, which is one of her key debuffs, and it is actually still one of the best debuffs in the game, will now be applied to all enemies instead of the targeted enemy, and will last 4 turns instead of the usual 2 turns that it did before. On top of that, her base S1 and S2, which is the versions without the plus version, is also free skill use as well, which I guess helps her longevity. Aranea now also starts with both her EX and LD buffs, which helps you a lot because then you don't have to worry about ramping up. Her EX also makes her next skill use free, which further helps her longevity and also extends her overclock buff by 4 turns. She gets a new FR weapon here, and her FR inflicts 6 turns of Vital Crusher to all enemies and would also give her 4 turns of overclock if she did not have that buff. Her force time conditionals are: if you delay an enemy, you get plus 40%. If you deal a crit on an enemy during your turn, you get plus 30%. Beyond that, if you deal any critical hits, the critical hits will be boosted by a plus 50% HP damage and will also benefit from 50% boost to Brave and HP damage caps. And that's where her Vital Crusher debuff comes in. In case you're not aware, Vital Crusher debuff will increase the critical hit rate to 100%, which means that as long as that debuff is up, any brave hits that you do on an enemy should be dealing a critical hit. Overall, she is pretty solid. Her rework actually fixed some of a few issues that she had before, which is her buff management with very few turns on her overclock buff that she had before, and the fact that Vital Crusher used to only apply to one enemy and last only for 2 turns. In my opinion, the main issue she has now is really just poor timing of her release. Coming after heavyweight hitters such as Tifa and Rinoa, and I guess quite a number of people will also have pulled and built Fan and Ardyn, for example, makes it a little bit difficult to justify going for Aranea. The question I always ask myself is, if I do pull for a unit, do I foresee myself using that unit? Because if I'm not gonna use that unit, then really there's no point using, and it's very challenging to justify a party slot over other heavy hitters. There is one other special mention, at the very least on this banner is that Celes will also be appearing here, and I just want to give him a shout out because he is one of the better LD call abilities in the game. When you use the Celes LD call, you get a 2 turns party-wide call aura that provides your party with 100% crit rate, and on top of that, his LD call is an instant break on all enemies and provide a little bit of nice buffs to the party as well. The only weapon I'm missing here is actually just Aranea's force weapon, and I have to say I don't really have a lot of interest in that. So for me, this banner is an easy skip. The final event and banner on this arc is going to be the release of Dorgann. I won't go too much in details about Dorgann's kit. If you are interested to learn more, you can check out the character evaluation post on Reddit made by Sinewave, and I'll include a link of that in the video description as well. As a quick overview, his S1 is an AoE force break attack that also applies a 6-turn framed win in peril. His S2 provides him a framed buff, and that buff will cause him to do a follow-up attack anytime you break an enemy. His EX rebreaks and also turn manipulates one ally to act after him, and his EX also lands a 1-turn frame debuff that causes the next attack from the enemy to deal 0 brave and or HP damage. Finally, his LD, which is pretty key to his kit, would recover 1 skill use of his S1 or S2 after use, but importantly, his LD also upgrades his triggered attack. With his LD now, his triggered attack becomes the plus version, and that does 3 HP dumps instead of the 1 HP dump that it had before. Overall, Dorgann's key is capitalizing on bricks because that will lead to his triggered attack and deal additional damage. So if you have a brick centric team, for example even using rebreakers such as Vayne or Ardyn, or of course Aranea, who was released before this event, would lead to an increased number of triggered attacks by Dorgann. And you can also consider comboing him with characters such as Sephiroth with his PT aura, allowing the enemy's brave to reset to 1 every turn, guaranteeing that you can break at least 1 enemy every single turn. On the flip side though, this also means that if the enemy on the stage has a brave floor or immunity to breaks, then Dorgann would actually perform extremely poorly. Dorgann's force also centers around his ability to capitalize on breaks, so his force conditionals are whenever you deal any wind damage attack, including off turn, you get a plus 5%, and this is pretty good because Dorgann's triggered attack is also wind elemental. Dorgann doing any wind attack will get an additional 20% on top of this for a total of 25%, and anytime you break an enemy, you get a plus 20% to the force conditional. On top of this, to help you further capitalize on breaks, when you are in Dorgann's force time, all attacks you do are guaranteed to force break enemies regardless of how much brave they have, unless they are immune to breaks. All attacks that you do will also cancel the enemy's break status, thereby guaranteeing that any attack you do will definitely break the enemy and trigger Dorgann's full-up attacks, as well as triggering a lot of his force conditionals. Overall, I think that Dorgann is a pretty strong character, and he can really have the potential to become insanely powerful if you build a party surrounding his ability to capitalize on breaks. That being said, I don't think you really need Dorgann for any event. If you did pull already for the heavy hitters such as Tifa and Rinoa and maybe even Minwu, or the other DPS characters like Van or Ardyn, you should probably get by pretty comfortably until at least Jack Garland comes, which is pretty soon, I think in 2 months time. So if you are hurting for resources, you could also potentially skip this banner as well. My plan is to go in with tickets here. For one thing, I usually try to spend tickets once during an arc because I do need to claim tickets from the co-op shop and from the hunt token shop. For another thing, by this point in time, I think I would have another bunch of tickets that will be close to expiry, so I do need to spend a little bit here. And on the off chance that I have not yet scored Celes's BT, then this is obviously the banner that I hope that I can score her burst weapon on. On this part of the video, I'll be covering my opinion, and I can't stress that enough, my opinion on which characters that you can probably try to prioritize for if you have limited resources in gems, tickets or ingots. It is a pretty empty slide this time around as well, and big disclaimer, I will only put characters here that I think deserve special mention. So in case you're wondering why I didn't even put Aranea here, that's mainly because I don't think she stands out enough as a DPS to warrant special mention. At this point of the game, there are many other characters who can do very similar levels of damage as Aranea, and many of them would also have a PT weapon as well, so it's very difficult to justify a party slot for Aranea. Yes, she can break delay, but in today's meta, it is very easy to actually do no boss turn even without the break delay utility. So all in all, I decided to just leave Aranea out of this. In terms of the weird character positioning on the slide, just quick elaboration on that. So I put Dorgann and Celes sort of on the line between good value and role fulfillment. This time around, I don't think there's actually a very clear-cut case of any character that provides a lot of good value, and a lot of the choices here really would depend on what roles you need to fill in your roster. I think the closest two characters that would come to good value would be both Dorgann and Celes. But that being said, by no means would you really struggle even if you don't have them. If you have a lot of tanks, then Celes becomes much more optional. So because of that, I don't think she fits into the good value category, but I would put her at the top of the role fulfillment category. Dorgann, likewise, I feel pretty similar. As a DPS character, like I said, there are many other options. The only reason why I sort of put him on the corner or on the edge of the good value category is that his mechanic of his kit plays very differently from other characters. So while he is so-called a DPS character, the way that he does the damage, I think, stands out enough at least to warrant a spot at that place on the slide. Galuf also appears on one of the banners on this arc, and I just want to give him special mention that he is still quite a competent cover tank, and he is one of the few tanks that actually has evasion on his kit. So if you really need an evasion based tank, then Galuf is your go-to. It does hurt a little bit though in terms of timing, because Celes is also released on this arc as well, and really by this point I think if you already have Celes, then there's much less need for you to go after Galuf. And on the corner right there, you see a smaller version of Kate Sif, and that's really just to signify that the most value out of that, or the main value out of that, is a call ability. So if you're really missing a good call ability utility, the Kate Sif is a pretty decent pickup. It kinda sucks that he's appearing on Aranea's banner, so it is sort of an individual call to make whether or not you want to pull for Kate Sif's LD call ability at this stage of the game. So that's it for this video. In summary, I'll be going gems for Celes's FR and hopefully her burst weapon as well. I will be skipping Aranea's banner, I will be spending tickets for Dorgann, and all in all I may token Celes's PT if I really haven't got it by the end of the arc, but let's see. Hope this video has been helpful, and if you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment or subscribe, really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next Poolpan video. Bye!